Our leading story now of the water situation. Of course, the heavy rains here in Johannesburg. Let's welcome in studio City of Johannesburg Emergency Management Services spokesperson, Mr. Robert Mulaudzi. Robert, a very good morning to you.
Morning, Alicia.
Robert, why are you here with me in studio? Why aren't you out on the streets helping those people that have suffered because of the past heavy rain?
No, right now, I think we have done a lot of work in the last 2 days
what
already.
What have you done, Robert?
Yeah, we have been responding to a number of incidents, flooding incidents in most parts of the city. It was hectic on the roads. A number of roads were flooded. To be specific, areas like Deep Slot Extension 7, we had to evacuate some of the residents in those areas to an emergency shelter in Deep Slot Extension 2 Community Center. There's areas like El Dorado Park, Klesbred West area where a number of houses were flooded, and also we had to rescue some of the residents who were staying in one of the disused buildings, which used to be a shooting range in the area. So, yeah, those will be, the major incidents which we had to attend to. Yeah.
All right. Any casualties reported so far, Robert?
Yeah, I think it was only one lady, the one I'm talking about from Klesbred. Yes, the one who was evacuated from that area. Yeah, so that was the only person who was I would say a patient which we had to transport to, the nearest healthcare facilities. But overall, we didn't have any major incidents. Yeah.
And going back to those the key areas that you mentioned, the most affected, Robert, I understand that you guys actually, as the services, have an evacuation communication mechanism system in place with them.
Yes.
How does that actually work?
Yes, in the city of Johannesburg, we've got. If we don't have any, and maybe an added one, like maybe last night, we're looking at about 189 informal settlements throughout the city of Johannesburg. So those informal settlements will be, most of the vulnerable communities when we have, wet weather conditions like the ones we had 2 days ago. So we've got what we call automatic rainfall systems, which we have installed in those areas. So those automatic rainfall systems assist us to not only measure, the amount of rainfall we had, but also to disseminate information for evacuation purposes. We have installed those automatic rainfall systems in areas like Alexander, Sweta. It always gives us a problem.
Are you going to do it for all the other areas?
Yes, or in all the 7 regions of the city. We'll make sure that we cover all of them so that when we have, incidences like this, we can be able to
How does that system actually work? Do you phone the residents? Do you send them SMSs?
Yeah, we can be able to send like SMSs to the residents because already we've got our community emergency response teams in those areas. Yeah. So these community emergency teams consist of community members in the specific areas who have been trained on basic first aid, basic firefighting, disaster management preparedness. They know how to evacuate, using things like whistles. So those will be added, initiatives which we're doing over and above the information we get from the South African Weather Service.
Okay. Yeah. And then those that you have evacuated, Robert, do you take them to temporary shelters? Yes. And for how long? And what happens when they come back home in case they've lost their houses? Yeah,
it's a challenge, because we're looking at, I think the executive mayor has been talking about us eradicating, informal settlements completely, because when we have wet weather conditions, we have flooding incidents. When it's winter, we have more fire incidents. Yeah. So now most of these community residents, when we evacuate them to put them in the temporary shelter, they still want to go back there because they've got their own, understandable, so they've got their own belongings there. They don't want to stay in a temporary shelter for long. Yeah. So we're just hoping that, of course, that issue is not our jurisdiction, but those who are it's within their jurisdiction, they will be able to address the issues like that of making sure that these residents can, have permanent, housing for themselves. Yeah, in future.
I mean, is there plans for long-term sustainability of what you've just said, Robert? Because, that's the better plan instead of always having to wait for rain and then having to evacuate people and then they move back there. I mean, what if you're not there to assist them?
It's actually understandably so. But however, we're trying to convince them, Alicia, because most of the time this rainfall might come at night, midnight, while they're asleep. They might actually be, swept away by this flood. So what we're doing is saying, no, you can't go back in those areas up until we know that we're not going to have, rainfall, because right now we are told we might still have some rainfall, over, the weekend. So from our side, we're saying to our residents, most especially, residents throughout the city of Johannesburg, not only residents in the informal settlements, because our research informs us that a few days after we've had, wet weather conditions like the ones we had, we have an increase in terms of the number of drowning incidents, because young children attempted to go, they crossing to schools. They are also attempted to play in these river streams and dams. So we have a number of drowning incidents which are reported. So adults out there and parents need to monitor, the young ones. And of course, our residents in the informal settlements, they need to work with us so that we can prevent, some of these incidents by making sure that when we evacuate them, when we inform them about any, safety messages, they need to adhere to our calls. Yeah. Of course, Alicia, we cannot forget about motorists.
Yeah,
every time,
I was about to ask.
Every time we have issues with the taxi drivers, I'm singling them out because they're carrying out a lot of passengers in their vehicles.
Absolutely, yeah.
You still find, taxis. When the road is barricaded, exactly, they even remove those barricaded things to try and take a chance to cross those areas. So we cannot afford to lose, lives while we're trying to, manage the situation. So of course, all the motorists we urge them to adhere to our calls to refrain from attempting to cross, these routes. We understand, it's better to use a long route rather than to use a short route, and then you end up losing your life. So that was the challenge, because you can still see in some of the footages you're showing now that there are vehicles which are stuck in that. But you can ask yourself, the motorist who was driving in that area, he could see that, he or she could see that the area is flooded, but they still, insist of attempting to cross those areas.
Is there any way to reach out to the taxi drivers, as we've just singled them out, to tell them that it's not advisable to go over barricaded roads?
Exactly. When we have our public education outreach programs, these are some of the things we try and, educate everyone that when we have emergencies, like situations like this one, we have to work together. Absolutely. So that we can minimize, injuries and things like that. So it's very important for motorists to listen to our calls so that we can be able to manage the situation. Of course, we need to be able to respond to incidences which people cannot be able to manage. Not situations where people create them, are created by not listening to our messages. South African Weather Service, they are doing their best. We're doing our best to make sure that everyone is safe. But at the end of the day, if we don't listen to each other, then we are not going to be able to manage the situation.
Absolutely. All right. Now, we're still expecting more heavy rain. Robert, outline those flood-prone areas once again, and also just to remind motorists to stay away from these flood-prone areas.
In our informal settlements, we're monitoring like your Jackske area, Soweto area, and also in Klip Valley, in Soweto. That area of Kliptown, Klipspread West, Eldorado Park, because those will be the major streams which you have throughout the city. Okay. So we're just hoping that our motorists will be able to work, because some of the roads might be damaged. They need to drive, safely on those roads. If the road is flooded, they need to use alternative routes.
Absolutely. And Robert, where can people, get updates on the weather, and of course on some of the precautions, and also report some issues in the area to you guys?
Yeah, from our side, we urge them to check our social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, listen to the radio, watch television for latest weather updates. And also, if there's a life-threatening emergencies, I will repeat this one. Life-threatening emergency, you call 011-375-5911.
Robert, thank you so much for that update. That is City of Johannesburg Emergency Management Services spokesperson, Mr. Robert Mulaudzi, giving us a key account of what's happening in terms of the heavy rain and things that you need to look out for. You have been warned. The warnings are out there. Make them useful to you.